So, everybody, welcome to the February 2024 meeting of the Carolina Orchards Americans for Democracy and Equality. And this is who we've got in our gallery right now. And we have a couple of guests. And I want to introduce you to the guests because we're going to be hearing about a group called CAPE, C-A-P-E, the Community Advocates for Public Education. And guys, the only reason why I can spit that out so well is I'm looking at it here on my my monitor. In the center square is Lacey Lane. Lacey, introduce yourself. Tell people just a little bit about who you are.
Sure. I'm Lacey Lane. I am one of the founding organizers for CAPE. I do a lot of event planning for the group, a lot of organizing some of our action items that we have for our group members. Outside of CAPE, I'm a school counselor of 15 years at the elementary level. I have two children, ages 8 and age 9. He just turned 9 this week. I'll get used to saying that. And an almost 5-year-old as well. And I've gotten into advocacy locally within the past couple of years, and it has been quite a journey. And through CAPE, we've really found that there are a lot of people locally that care a lot about public education, and it's been really exciting for me to get involved with. I've made great friends through it, and we've made a great impact locally. So it's a little bit about me. We
will find out all about the group in just a minute, but on the right-hand square is Katherine Gutteridge. And Katherine, tell people a little bit about who you are.
Yeah, I'm Katherine. I'm a parent of 2 children in the Fort Mill School District. I have a 14 and 10-year-old, so a middle schooler and an elementary schooler for just a little bit longer. I'm a founding member of CAPE also. I've been super involved in advocacy since we began this journey. Lacey was the one that got me involved in advocacy. And I work for WREN, the Women's Rights and Empowerment Network.
Okay. We will take some questions from our folks here in the Peanut Gallery after you guys have had a chance to explain what the group is all about. So let's do that, explaining what the group is all about. Lacey, do you want to get it started?
Sure. Well, we are a group, a very fast-growing group. We launched in January of 2023 after a very disappointing state superintendent of education race in which Ellen Weaver had won and beat out Lisa Ellis, who by all accounts was highly qualified for the position, especially when you compare it to who won that seat, who did not have a master's degree at the time, which was needed to run. She then bought said degree from Bob Jones University to be able to be qualified for the position. Never an education major prior to that. She did not ever teach in a classroom. She doesn't have children, so she didn't have that experience from the parent perspective either. And she doesn't seem to have a love for public education. A lot of her previous goals and what she's done so far in her seat kind of show her preference for private schools, the privatization of education in general here in South Carolina. So that, as a educator and as a parent of 2 children in public schools, was very concerning. And I had a lot of friends that also, shared that concern. And so we got together and formed CAPE. And it kind of blew up since then. We have over 800 members comprised of York County parents, educators, community members, grandparents, everyone just coming together in support of public education. So a lot of what we do is we work to educate our members. So a lot will get this education from our social media. We have a Facebook group. We have a Facebook page that is also informative. We have a website with some information. We're working on our newsletter. But I will say our private group is our main source of action items for the reason that we work very hard to vet our members. And so through that effort, we really try to make it easy for our group members to stay informed about what has happened locally and at the state level when it comes to public education. We also try to empower our members, and we really meet everybody where they're at. We have very active members, and we have members that kind of follow along but don't really chime in on the social media, but are hopefully taking some of those action items, from behind the scenes where we can't see. But we meet them where they're at, whatever the level of advocacy comfort level is for them. Some of that is showing up to the state house with us, or some of it sending an email or simply sharing a post on their own social media, or even having a conversation with a friend about something they learned. These are all levels of advocacy which make a difference. So we appreciate that. We meet people where they're at. We also love to host events. We try to make learning about public education advocacy fun. So we do that through some social events, whether it's teach-ins when we have special guests. Sometimes we just have events where we find joy with each other, because advocacy in any issue in South Carolina can be really challenging, because we want to make sure that we are taking care of ourselves as we go on this journey together, because it is a lot of work. So some of them are simply to find joy, but most have some form of educational piece tied into some fun as well, whether it's at a coffee shop or a wine bar, or some kind of experience that we're having together and learning. And the last one is we engage. We love to talk with our local legislators, school board members, anyone that holds some decision-making power, and we love to build relationships with them. And that's not always easy, because they don't always vote in ways that support public education, just where we are, where we live. So we really try to learn their perspective, and we try to share our perspective as educators, as parents, as involved community members, because their ear for so long has been held by the loud and persistent minority, and they're not hearing accurate information. They're hearing a lot of rhetoric. They're hearing a lot of misinformation and disinformation about public ed and what it actually looks like in the schools. So it's really nice for us to be able to talk from a different perspective, and for them to hear from us, who they get to know and trust as well, which has been really cool. And I'm going to let Katherine jump in and share a little bit more with you guys about how you can get involved, because we would really love to expand our group to include just a more diverse age range, a more diverse everything. And that's why we're here tonight. We're so glad you can have us.
Yeah, so thank you, Lacey. She always does such a fantastic job of introducing the group. So as Lacey said, we follow a lot of legislation, and that's where our big action items come from. There's a lot of legislation around public education, not all of it good. We've seen things pass around voucher bills, so siphoning public funds away from public schools to private schools. So our goal really is to work to stop any further bad legislation making its way through. It's really important that our legislators hear from us. As Lacey said, it's so often they hear from this loud and persistent minority, because they really are the minority. So a big part of what we do is asking people to contact legislators. That can be by phone, that can be going to the State House and pulling them out and actually having a meeting with them. And that can be sending an email, or even just taking an action on one of our partners. They set up some great easy actions for us to do, where we can just simply click and send an email. So there's definitely lots of ways to get involved. There's lots of different ways to touch advocacy.
So it sounds like a lot of the interaction with the government that you have is with our state government down in Columbia.
Yes.
But you guys are York County based, not statewide, right?
Right. Yeah, we're purely York County, but our legislators up here, except for the school board, they're all traveling down to Columbia. That's when they're in session, when they're actually dealing with these bills, is the best time for us to speak to them. We do have in-district meetings with them as well. But if there's a particular bill, for example, there's the gender affirming care bill right now, which has a piece that's been added back into it in subcommittee that requires school staff to out students to their parents, regardless if they know that will cause that student harm. If we can actually have people texting, calling, emailing when that's being debated, and the legislator is seeing all of those calls, those emails, those texts, it does have an impact. It really does help them to see, maybe actually my constituents aren't for this. And sometimes it's about getting the worst parts of a bill out. So maybe they won't vote for the amendment for school teachers. Unfortunately, some other things may pass, but we have to, in this environment we're in, we have to try and take any actions we can to deaden the impact.
Right. And as I was introducing you and talking to you, to the group here, I was noting that you guys are non-partisan.
Mm-hmm.
You don't endorse political candidates, things like that. But how else does the nonpartisan thing work with you guys?
We support legislators and candidates that support public education. So we will share the facts about candidates that are running. We will be sharing a lot of facts coming up as we get close to the primaries and election season this November. I think it's going to be pretty obvious who the candidates that are for public education are as we share quotes, as we share video clips. So we're not in the business of telling people how to vote, but we do want to make sure that they have the facts when it comes to public education. I think it's going to take people on all sides to come together and say, this is what's right for South Carolina students. This is what's right for our students here in York County. So even though we are based York County, right? But a lot of what impacts public education locally happens in Columbia. It is the decision making that happens at the state level that trickles down and impacts everything we do here in York County. We could cast a wider net and go statewide, but we just felt it was more impactful to focus locally, especially as we build those relationships with our local legislators. And we have done that through a lot of in-district meetings. And as we talk, we can kind of feel and find who's on which side as we have those discussions. But it's all about, trying to, come to an understanding of each other and, kind of seeing where we can meet in the middle. And it's not always easy because we don't always agree. But we want to make sure that they are receiving that accurate information. And no matter what party you identify with, or if you're an independent, wherever you fall, I think when it comes to these public education issues, a lot of it is common sense. And it seems, at least from my perspective and my lens as an educator and a parent with children in public schools, it is very student first. And so when we have a state that is consistently making bills and decisions that is not putting the benefit of our students first and is pushing teachers out of the classroom in the midst of a time when teacher recruitment and retention is really at its highest, and we're at a little bit of a tipping point. We need to make sure that we have everybody working together. I don't think it's something that one party alone can fix. So we do our best to, really just share facts and let people decide for themselves. So that's kind of what nonpartisan looks for us. We do have, if you think about voting records, you can kind of see which party maybe typically supports more public, educative, supportive candidates. But we really are just trying to support anyone that can make the right decisions for students.
And I will say, from a state perspective, we're really fortunate to have been connected with a lot of other organizations around the state. We've got some great consortiums of other groups. There's FAB in Beaufort, there's DALO, there's PFLAG in Anderson. So there's a lot of other groups that we've been able to connect with and share best practice with as well.
And we are targeted to public education, and maybe some of these other groups have, they have a variety of causes that they support. We do tend to stay in our public ed lane with CAPE. We will partner with ACLU-SC a lot for our education and our guest speakers, and as a resource to us as we're learning and making these really confusing bills easy to digest for us to then share with our group. But we really do focus more on public ed. So even though we might learn and collaborate with other orgs that do a little bit more for CAPE, it's all about public ed.
Can you clarify what the young lady said before about telling on the students to the parents? Did I hear that right or wrong?
Yeah, so there's currently a bill. It's already been passed by the House. It's passed the Senate Medical Affairs Subcommittee, and on Thursday it's in the Medical Affairs Full Committee. So the main part of the bill is to ban any gender affirming care for any minors or anyone on Medicaid. But they have added to that bill a provision that will require any school employee to notify any parent of a child who displays any form of, I guess, dissatisfaction with the gender they were assigned at birth.
Oh, okay. I misunderstood. You're absolutely right.
Yeah. So regardless of if that counselor, principal, vice principal, teacher knows that that will put that child in harm's way, they have to take that action.
So you don't want to notify the parents just to maybe see if what they want to do? The child may be being mistreated at home, trying to make a boy a girl or a girl a boy, play with toys, play with dolls. It might be psychologically something going on in the home also. And mommy and daddy probably already are aware that something is not quite right. I'm an educator. Okay, mm-hmm. I was an educator in Manhattan. And I'm a mother, so yes, I know. But you have to think of it's not shouting out the kid. It's trying to see what kind of family life he has, and if he's not being threatened in the house, not threatened, but made to feel inadequate, made to feel that he's a sissy.
But I think that's
or whatever you want to call it, or so that.
That's the key. Is there can be many situations and many cases. I think the danger with this provision is it forces it in any case, and it's extremely vague. It could be if a child decides one day they want to wear a skirt or a girl wants to wear pants. It's so vague and it can encompass so much that it's putting educators in a very difficult position.
No, I understand that, but isn't there they could set up some kind of a committee that could be done quietly, not because but somebody is going to say something. That's not what
this bill says. The bill is you must notify, and I think there's a certain time period that they've written into it, but it is you must notify regardless of any cause for concern that you may have. It takes all of the discussion and all of the looking out for the child out of it. It's you must notify regardless. And I think that's interesting.
You're right. I understand where you're coming from, but you have to remember you're in the South, and the South doesn't know separation of church and state, and that's a fact of life. And in order for you to get something, my opinion, in order for you to get something really done, it's not going to be only with petitions and people, because these people don't understand that. They just understand what, like the guy that they just did this thing where an officer in Alabama to stop women's rights. You're going to need very big lawyers who can fight for you. So what you really have to do is do a lot of fundraising to get a lot of money to be able, or get some good lawyer who's really on your side that does pro bono. But that's what you're going to need. You're not going to turn these people around with 50,000 people yelling at them. They don't care. They're out for one thing. They don't even care if they're going to have their job next week.
So I don't know, Lacey and Katherine. First of all, do you guys hire lawyers?
I'm sorry, I'm taking. I shouldn't talk. I do talk a lot.
Yeah, hang on there.
Well, I appreciate your passion and your perspective as a former educator. I'm also from New York, so hello. But, when I testified in opposition of this bill, along with, I think there was 47 other South Carolinians that testified. There was one dude from Georgia who testified virtually in support of the bill. But overwhelmingly, we had parents, we had educators, we had trans people, we had students that were speaking out against this bill for the reason that all of the reasons why it's a bad bill. But the one that CAPE organizers really focused on was the outing piece. Forced outing is always going to be dangerous for students. It is always going to put students at risk for the reason, and like you said, we are in the South. There is not always a great understanding and support for any gender differences. And what this bill does is it puts teachers in the crosshairs. It gives teachers yet another responsibility that should not be their responsibility, which is to determine if a child is having any kind of, curiosity in regards to their gender perception, their gender expression. So if a student decides to, explore their clothing choices, that couldn't it fall under this forced outing? That's going to be a decision that has to be made. If a student, Jack, wants to go by Jackie, okay, is this because of a gender request or is this a nickname? There's a lot of questions with that. But even if you take all the annoying burdensomeness of it, what it does too is it gets in the way of that teacher-student relationship as well. There is a certain trust, and sometimes students will share some information or share that, maybe they are fearful to be their true selves at home, but then that teacher would have the lawful duty and burden to share this information with parents, knowing that it can put that child in harm's way, that this child is going to have an increased risk of abuse in their home, that child is going to be at an increased risk of suicide. So we already know our trans youth are at a higher risk of suicide, not due to them being trans, but due to society's rejection of them being trans and not gender conformative. So we know that it puts our students at risk, which is what I shared with legislators when I testified. I testified how ethically, as a school counselor, and a child discloses information about their journey and their gender, that is not something I am legally bound or ethically bound to share with parents. And the reason I wouldn't is because that is part of that child's journey. That is not my responsibility to share with their parents. That is up to them. Now, would I encourage students to talk with their parents and share? Yeah, but they are the experts in their own lives, and they know better the risk in their home than I ever could from this little slice that I know about them at the school level. And same goes for teachers. So it would be really hard. And I think you mentioned a committee of some sort. I think one of the legislators also talked about, maybe having like the counselor and the principals talk together and figure it out. We are not in the schools. We are not licensed to diagnose gender dysphoria. This is not a burden that needs to be placed on teachers, counselors, or administrators. This is not an appropriate use of time. The only reason they're doing it is to harm trans youth. They say it's for transparency. They say it's a parent's right to know. But if a parent wants to know, they need to have that relationship with their child, that child feels safe enough to talk with them about this stuff. And if that child is not talking with a parent about their gender journey, there's probably a reason for it. And it's not up to me or a principal or a teacher to overstep that. So if this does pass and become a law, we're going to see the risk increase for abuse, for suicide. We're going to see educators leave the classroom because they can't ethically put up with that burden because they know the damage it will do to these students. And if anyone walks into a high school, it's going to be real hard to figure out which students would fall into the category of we need to report or not report. Because, gender is a spectrum and kids express themselves in all kinds of ways, as do people. So logistically, I think this is going to be a very difficult bill should it pass on what that looks like. There's going to have to be a lot of things made more clear so that people know legally what needs to be done and when. But no matter what, it's going to be harmful for trans youth.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I agree that, but what I'm saying, if you want to change the bill and get it, in your favor, you're going to have to do fundraising and get some big people behind you. It's not enough parents. We don't have enough clout, or they wouldn't have turned over Rowan Way.
So, sounds to me like Shirley wants to join the Cape.
No, I'm just telling you. I have strong opinions on a lot of things, and yeah. I'm very liberal. I have kids all in my classrooms. I was a supervisor. So for me, this is normal stuff.
I understand, and I have a principle when I run groups. If somebody wants to tell me how I need to run my group, they have to join the group and participate. They can't just start telling me how they want things to go.
And excuse me, I have a question.
You don't want to turn me loose on them.
I don't know if you can see me.
Yeah,
but
now
I do
go
have
ahead.
A question,
Yeah.
and I wanted to get my question in. So I'm just really trying to understand. First of all, I wanted to applaud you for starting this group because I am a product of public education, and also are my grandsons. And so, Lacey, my grandsons are 8 and 5. But I just want to get a clear understanding as well. So with this bill, that's not your only focus, is it? I mean, it's pretty much like a general broad focus for your organization.
Oh, yeah.
We've been focused on that bill. We've been heavily focused on the regulation that was just passed through the State Board of Education that will centralize the selection of library materials and school library materials. So some of us went to the State Board of Education meeting we were hoping to speak, but didn't quite get on the list high enough up. We've been focused on the governor's budget proposal. So he was proposing this reduction of salary lanes. I'm trying to think of everything.
I mean, there's been a lot this past year. Unfortunately, in South Carolina, public education is essentially under attack left and right. Whether you see it at local school boards, thankfully, it's been good in York County. We were able to protect our school boards and make sure that people with an agenda against public education didn't make their way on to a lot of them. Doesn't mean that we didn't get any. Some of our school boards in Fort Mill and Rock Hill, they do contain people that kind of ran campaigns that showed that they are not fully true supporters of public education and student first mindsets. But we do a good job locally. That's not the case across the state, and we know we're going to have our work cut out for us in November to protect our school boards here in York County. We are heavily Fort Mill. A lot. Our organizer team is Fort Mill. We are trying to attract, people from our other 3 districts here in York County to join us in those efforts so we can get better versed in those areas. But we focus locally. We focus heavily on any bill impacting public ed. So while we talked about the one outing piece of 4624 with the teacher outing, that is like one slice of all the things that we address. So, I mean, there's a lot coming down the pipeline. We battled a lot last spring, but where you're going to find that information is in our Facebook group. Anytime we have an action item, and we usually, this time of year when legislation is in session, we usually got some action cooking weekly, whether it's emails to send, whether it's share this on your social media or through texts and your email. We've got a lot of action items coming out just so we can kind of make sure everyone is paying attention, because I know before I got into advocacy these last few years, even as an educator for 15 years, I got to admit, I didn't know a whole lot about what was happening and how much it impacted education, but that also, it was also because there wasn't this constant onslaught of rhetoric and misinformation regarding what I do. For example, I'm a school counselor. When I first started, and for many, many years, social emotional learning was just a beautiful thing that I got to teach, and everyone loved it because we want our kids to make great choices. We want our kids to regulate their emotions. But in the past several years, the tide turned a little bit, and all of a sudden we're indoctrinating children, and social emotional learning is a way to, make your children, leftist whatevers. I'm not really sure. I can't keep up with all the things I'm supposedly doing when I teach social emotional learning.
You're making them woke.
I'm making them woke. I don't know. Yeah. I'm just trying to help them be good people that know how to regulate their big feelings so they can make smart and safe choices and do teamwork and work with other people that maybe are different from them. So it's not that what educators and what counselors and what we're doing, that's not necessarily change. It's the perception of public education, of social emotional learning, of whatever the shiny buzzword is on whatever news channel they're consuming. It's really about just protecting public education, because I think, unfortunately, the goal underneath it all is to dismantle public education and to privatize it, because that's where there is some money to be made. But it's going to segregate our schools. You know, if one of the bills we're looking at is to have open school choice across the state, which you can think of, our Fort Mill schools are going to be flooded if that happens. And, you know, who has the privilege of choosing to, I'm gonna drive my kid to this better school because I can, because I don't have to work. I can take my child. I've got, you know, my working husband. I can go do this. I can pack their lunch because these schools aren't maybe providing lunch. And if my child needs free lunch, well, you know, that's not it for me. It's the kids that are going to be left behind are the ones that are at that socioeconomic disadvantage. They don't have the transportation to get to that better school. They don't have the lunches that are provided for them at these private schools or whatever it is that we're looking at. So we know that everything they're trying to line up and do is eventually going to dismantle public ed, and it's going to segregate our schools. It's bad news there.
And I like the fact too that you provide factual information. So when it's time for people to go out and vote, voters, that they can know what they're voting for. Because with us, we're always like, well, we don't know. Like, who do we vote for? Where can we get that information from? And what have you? And either vote for the wrong person or not vote at all. And when you don't vote at all, you're still casting a vote for the person that should be voted in. So I really appreciate that. And I'm glad that you're getting that across.
Thank you. Yeah, we work really, really hard at that. And we're fine tuning. We meet, you know, monthly, bi-monthly as organizers to kind of fine tune how we're going to disseminate election information. You know, I think this is probably a good point that we can make here before we move on to the next portion of our show here. One of the big things I wanted to impart on anyone that might be watching this here in February and March in Fort Mill School District especially, we need everybody to get out and vote on March 19th. There is the Fort Mill School District bond referendum that is going to, and Katherine can probably speak better to it. There's a lot of information we're going to share about it. We're getting ready to share. We just had an information session with the committee for this bond referendum. But this is going to fund the additional schools that need to be built here in this fastest growing county in South Carolina. We need to keep our class sizes low. We need to introduce opportunities for early childhood education that we are lacking in our county. So we need to make sure that anyone in Fort Mill School District, Fort Mill TKK, that is eligible to vote will get out and vote on March 19th. Okay, so that's coming up. And we need everyone to vote yes on that bond referendum, because if we don't properly fund this, our class sizes are going to go up, and this really wonderful school district that we have right now is going to suffer for it. So, is there anything you want to add to that, Katherine, about the importance of that referendum?
Yeah, we had this session yesterday. It was really great. They've done a fantastic job of laying out all of the information, the impact of the bond if it's passed, which is, so what they have done is they've asked for the maximum amount of money that they will need for land acquisition, for building new schools, and for the pre-K4 building. However, as we know, there's impact fees that are going to be collected. So that will also then reduce the amount that's needed. They've just done this fantastic job of almost asking for the maximum. So we're all very clear on what the maximum impact on us will be tax-wise, knowing that that is likely not actually going to be the impact. There's another presentation at Fort Mill Golf Club where they're also going to present the same presentation to the community, if you'd like to hear more. But we do have the presentation, so we'll be posting that in CAPE with some commentary along with that. But the consequences of not passing it are, as Lacey said, increased class sizes, which we know impacts educational outcomes. It's going to be temporary trailers when there's just no more room in the classrooms. And trailers actually come out of the school operational budget, which means that either they would have to increase that budget or that will cost teacher salaries. So we would look at not having enough in the budget to pay for the teachers that we need when we're adding trailers and classrooms. So to be honest, I don't feel like I'm an alarmist, but the bond referendum really needs to pass. The growth isn't stopping. To be honest, we don't want the growth to stop because our schools have declined. We want to keep our schools strong and keep our schools at the top of the state.
What is the tax impact on people?
So they said it was on a $400,000 house, it would be $240 a year at the maximum bond amount of $204 million. But they don't anticipate having to borrow. So that would be if they borrowed the $204 million in one go right at the beginning. That's not how it's going to work. They're going to borrow as they build, and then they'll collect impact fees, so they won't actually need to use as much as they thought for this building. So it's not going to be from one year to the next. The tax bill will increase $204 a year.
I've noticed here in the South, North Carolina, we lived there for almost 15 years, and now South Carolina. When they build new schools, why do they build on one level? I mean, I'm from New York as well, and I remember going to elementary school, and we had 3 floors.
Five floors.
Why don't they build up so that they can allow for more children to be in these schools? Why do they build out? You know, is there a law? Is that some kind of a law?
Yeah, so for elementary schools, K1 and 2 cannot be up a level. So that's why in our elementary schools, we do have 2 floors at Rivertrail, at Kingstown, and Dobies. They're the ones I'm familiar with. So we have 2 floors.
Okay, Riverview.
Third, fourth, and fifth on the second floor, and K1 and 2 on the lower floor. At Forest Creek, that's 3 floors. I'm not familiar with how many floors are in the high school. That thing's a maze to me at Catawba Ridge. But they definitely do build up. I mean, I guess there is a balance with the safety with having to evacuate as well. But I do know there is that rule about the elementary schools, and I'm assuming that's why they only go those 2 floors.
Sure. And also, I mean, think about it. My school's 2 levels. It's a big, beautiful school. We're only in year 4, so it's still very shiny and new to us. But we've got about, 824, 25 kids at this point. And so, I mean, that's a lot for a school community, especially in a small town like Fort Mill, to have manageable grade levels, where we have enough related arts teachers for planning times and scheduling wise. There's so much logistics that goes in, from that top down, managing that amount of students. So our schools are already, kind of busting a little bit at the seams. Some schools are faring better on space than others. I think we've got a few frozen already. And once they freeze in Fort Mill, that they are then bused to another school. And we do that in Fort Mill to avoid having learning cottages or trailers for our students. That's something that I don't think we'll be able to maintain if the bond doesn't pass. We're not going to have the space to do we can do the busing until we can, and we're going to have the trailers. So we're kind of in that position.
How many children in classroom?
Ours here in Fort Mill, I've worked in Lancaster County Schools in New York School District 1 prior to coming to Fort Mill these past 8 years. And I will say we've got the lowest that I've seen locally, which is a beautiful thing. In my classrooms that I teach in, we've got like 22 students, 24. I'm in the upper grades. It's lower. We try to keep them lower early elementary just because it's,
Do you have any aides in the classroom?
Kindergarten, they get assistance, and that's it. Special ed classrooms, obviously, they're going to have some extra support and assistance, but we don't have assistance that support in 1st through 5th grade at the elementary level, only kindergarten. And you are going to see big differences in, coming from up north to the south. It's a bit of a culture shock if you're an educator up north and you come to a non-union state like South Carolina. Our teachers, until just this year, supervised their lunch the students at lunch. They supervise at recess still. There are not many breaks in the day for our educators. There are not assistants that come in and do that type of support. This year, we got a little bit of help from the district in employing some staff from the Greenway to supervise at lunch. So there are certain days of the week that teachers do not have to supervise because we have that help. And then we have non-homeroom teachers like myself and our other interventionists that will come in and help supervise during lunch, so our teachers can actually get some unencumbered time to plan and eat and all that. So it's going to look very different from schools in up north or Union states when you come to South Carolina. Unfortunately, we just don't have those supports.
Do they have anything special planned for special ed? To do anything? I'm a special educator.
Mm-hmm.
What are they doing for the kids down here? Because I went into your school one time and I wasn't thrilled. What are they doing to help our children? We have autistic children, multiply handicapped children, children who are, not as high up on the scale. What are you doing for? Where is this bill going to help these children?
So I wish we had we have a very passionate special education teacher that is on our organizing team. She couldn't be with us tonight to speak, but we already do a ton. I am a parent of an autistic child myself, so I've been very happy as a parent of a child on the spectrum because he is getting services and supports that I do believe he needs and benefits from. So specifically for special ed, I'm sure the bond addresses some of that. Catherine, do you remember any specifics that were shared at the meeting yesterday, or it's probably more about salaries for additional teachers and aides and things like that?
Yeah, there's nothing particularly in the bond. Unfortunately for us, what we're tending to have to do is show our legislators how the bills that they're looking to pass will actually have a negative impact on special education students. So, for example, the voucher bill that passed, one of our big concerns was that private schools don't have to take children that require special education. So what do? These children are now left in schools where the funding's being taken for these other children that are funneling off. And you're creating this segregated system. So unfortunately, it is really almost damage control that we have to do with these things. It's not really a proactive. We're not at the point of proactive. Kimberly does a lot of educating with our legislators on what special education is, how it looks, the impact of what they're doing on these children.
So my question is there a flyer with bullet points about the referendum so people could make educated decisions that are pro-students?
So there's a whole group that are working on this bond. I will see if they specifically have one. If they don't, then we will make one.
Yeah, because I would like to have some copies of those so I could talk to people about that.
Yes. So what we're going to do is we're going to share with Gary all of the links that are pertinent to anything we discussed tonight, to our website, to our Facebook group that we would love for you all to join if you are on Facebook, to our Facebook page to follow. We will also include the link to the committee page. They have a Facebook page. I believe they might have a website as well.
Yeah.
And they are going to share their slide deck for the presentation that they did with us yesterday. Catherine is on our social media team. So she and our other social media guru, they're going to be working on breaking down the juiciest bits that are going to be good for sharing. So they're going to work on making an easy to digest post about it. It's going to have some infographics and maybe some video too. And so all of that's going to be coming out in the coming weeks as we, head into this. 319 is coming up fast. So we want to educate people as fast as we can. So we had that information session last night. So we're just kind of thinking about what did we get from that is going to impact people the most to make them really understand the importance of voting and importance of making sure everyone they know in Fort Mill and TDK votes as well. There is an opportunity to get a sign for your yard to encourage people to vote on the 19th. So I will also share the link so we can gather your address and make sure that the committee gets it so they can come pop a sign in your yard in the next week or so.
We can't do that now.
We're not allowed.
We can't
We're not allowed to have signs in our
Signs.
not even in our window.
We have a pretty strict HOA here in Waterside, but we are very fortunate to be allowed 3 signs at a time come election season.
And sometimes we break it because what are they going to do? Are they going to fine us for 3 weeks?
They send you a nasty
Yeah, then you get
email.
the nasty gram, and then you take it out, and then you're like, oh, I didn't know. But yeah, it is good to just spread the word in any which way you can. So we'll be sure to share all of those links with Gary to share with you guys via email. And of course, if you think of questions later on, you can contact us through the email on the website, through our Facebook page, because there's going to be information coming in these next couple of months to keep everybody busy, feeling like they're making a difference about public education. And it really is going to take all of us. Gary, I was going to say thank you for allowing us to share the good that CAPE is doing. We really appreciate this opportunity to spread the word and to hopefully encourage others to get more involved.
Yep. So we're going to let our group talk to you guys more in just a minute. But before we close the public and broadcast portion of our talk, let's review how people can communicate with you, find out who you are, and maybe start participating more. I know you've got a website here. Lots of material on the website. It's Cape York County, CAPE, yorkcounty.org. And the Facebook group that you've got, you have a Facebook page, so anybody can go to the Facebook page, but the Facebook group is a private group. And so if someone wants to join, they're going to have to answer some questions and get a little bit vetted, because you don't want Shirley to come in there. I'm sorry, Shirley.
That's okay.
We'd love to have you, Shirley. We love your passion.
Yeah, Shirley, you can join. So how do they find you on? We gave the web address. How do they find you on Facebook? What's the best way to find you there?
Our web address actually has the links to our private Facebook page as well as our public-facing Facebook page. So it's the private group, and that's going to be where all the action items are. We really do work hard to vet our members to ensure that they're answering the questions that let us know, why they want to join, and that they share a similar mission and vision for public ed in our state. And then sometimes we do a little digging on some Facebook profiles and things. So we always want to make sure everyone is safe, because it is a safe space for our educators, our parents, and community members come together and talk freely about these issues. So that is going to be where the action items are. Our public-facing page will have some information as well, and our website, we work hard to make sure that includes all the good stuff too. And we're working on a newsletter. So,
and here's the most important part: you have merch.
Yeah, we do have merch. We try to bring, we're working on getting some more magnets to bring to our events. We love when we see those out and about, and we know that, we're not alone. We're surrounded by great people in York County that support and believe in our public education system. And so it feels good to come together. Right now I think we're sitting at over 860 members, and we are York County. I mean, I think that's not a shabby number right there. That's pretty good.
All right. Well, thank you guys for coming to this part of the meeting. We're going to close the YouTube stuff. So thank you guys for watching. Join CAPE, or at least watch what you guys are doing. And the bond, once again, the bond vote there's no early voting on the bond, right? That's just.
Yes, there is.
Oh, there is early voting. Okay.
Yeah. But you have to go to York.
Gotta. Okay.
Yeah.
Make the drive over to the town of York to the big government building.
There's also mailing that's early now. You can vote by mail.
Okay, but they're not opening up precincts and stuff for early voting.
Mm-mm.
No.
And if you want to find out where you can vote on this on the day of voting, which is what again? March what?
19th.
March 19th. Okay. So if you want to vote on March 19th and you're wondering where, you need to go to to SCVotes, scvotes.gov, and look on your voter information stuff. And it will tell you, once you put in your name and your address and the last 4 digits of your social security number, it'll tell you where your precinct is that you're going to go vote. Probably not all the precincts are going to be open. So where you may have voted for the presidential primary, or where you may have voted last November, maybe a different place, maybe the same place. So you want to find out where at SC.
And we will be sharing that information in the group as well, because I know there was some confusion around the presidential primary, because they weren't using the regular polling places. So,
and this is just the Fort Mill School District, right? So there won't be that many of them. There'll be a handful. All right. Thank you guys. Appreciate it. We'll turn off the YouTube and continue our discussion.